I get really annoyed with my fellow science peers. I think they're making it worse because everyone wants to yell and fight with each other instead of actually helping people.
Team, welcome to another week of the Mops and Mo's podcast here with Drew and Alex. Alex, welcome back. Hey, before we kick things off, you've probably seen plugs for this on the Instagram if you guys follow along, but in the last couple of weeks, we have launched a Discord server, which for people who don't know what that is, it's effectively an online community chat forum platform, I guess you could call it. But the idea there is that we create a space for folks to engage with each other, with some of our guests, with subject matter experts around training, around...
It also relieves me of an expectation to respond to the Instagram messages because now we have like a productive, structured place.
Exactly. So I think at least how I came about this, and I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but it seems that in this industry, a lot of engagement happens on LinkedIn, a lot of engagement happens on Facebook. Obviously, you see the engagement on Instagram, but there's not like a singular clearinghouse for all of that. And so the Mops and Mo's Discord, the Mops and Mo's online community is our attempt to provide that service. So we've made it cheap, $5 a month. I think the logic there is that if something like that is free, you'll engage and then sort of forget about it. But if it's something you're paying for, you're more likely to be a little bit more active. But we certainly didn't want it to be cost prohibitive. All that being said, though, Discord is confusing as hell. So some of this is a bit of a public service announcement. If somebody out there is listening and you are good at Discord, please reach out, let us know. Could definitely use a spot just to make sure that we're setting this thing up right. But for folks listening to this who are interested and do want to engage, we've already got over 100 members. Head to our website. You'll see the link. You scroll down a little bit to get involved with the community. Or I know you've been doing a good job of this on Instagram, just publishing links and getting people hooked up. So that is the new announcement, I guess, for Mops and Mo's is the online Discord community.
And just to make sure you guys understand what you get for that $5 a month, this is the place where we actually will be responsive and not just us, because we're not really the experts. We create a platform for the experts. We have the experts in there. A bunch of the previous podcast guests have agreed to join in. Mm-hmm. We've got John from our injury prevention side of this whole effort, answering questions about pain and training around injury and rehabbing injuries. We got people talking about, we have the director of the Army Heat Center. We have the former first sergeant of RASP. We have all sorts of people actively engaged in the conversation that can bring a lot more expertise than we do. I think I saw a couple different medical professionals in there, all sorts of good stuff where people bring a lot of knowledge. And we're trying to build a community where you can get like reliable, well-referenced answers from people who actually know what they're talking about rather than what you see on a lot of the social media.
And you can just straight up network. And I feel like it sounds like we're just plugging the hell out of this thing as like an advertisement, which maybe in some sense we are. But I mean, truly, this is the type of thing that I think could be really cool.
Drew's always wanted there to be a jobs board.
There's a jobs board. Yeah, I was just about to say, we have a jobs channel. So, if you're in the industry or you're looking to get in the industry, we're going to do our best to make sure we have as many current postings in there as we can. Also, announcements of upcoming events. That's not just Mops and Mo's events, but any symposiums, conferences, things like that. So again, very much as everything we've done so far, very much a grassroots effort, but we'll keep that price point low for forever. So hop on, introduce yourselves, get engaged. And let's do a hard pivot. Who are we talking to this week? Speaking of engagement.
Yeah, there you go. She's got much more engagement than we do.
Way more.
So we are talking to Alyssa Olenick, who you guys might know as Doc Lyss Fitness. Pretty big presence on social media in the fitness space. She identifies herself as an ultramarathoner, lifter, and hybrid coach. I think before all that, she was primarily focused on research and academia. She got her bachelor's in health science from Lockhaven University, her master's in exercise physiology from Western Kentucky, and a Ph.D. in exercise physiology from University of Georgia, where she looked specifically at sex differences and female metabolism. She's also picked up a few certs along the way, CrossFit Level 2, Certified Sports Nutritionist, things like that. And outside of the typical like research assistant, researcher kind of jobs, she founded and grew her own company to a really, really high level. So whether you've heard of Doc Lyss Fitness or the Lyss Method, that is her and her team of coaches doing really good work. in the hybrid athlete space, specifically a little bit more targeted for women. They certainly have male coaches and athletes participating. And all that started for her, as far as I can tell, with high school lacrosse, which led her into being a collegiate athlete. And somewhere along the way, kind of got more interested in the training and conditioning side, both as a scholar and as a practitioner. So she's doing really cool things, training people for all sorts of different goals. I know that she's had some military people in there. We talk about that a little bit in the episode. Hyrox is hot lately. CrossFit is always popular.
So
Ultra marathon stuff all across the board.
Yeah, and this was a cool conversation for me to have. I know you'll pick up on some of this when we talk to her, but I've followed her platform forever. I think you mentioned this, but previously it was Little Lyss before she was Doc Lyss. So she is small in stature, but certainly large in impact and knowledge, and cool as hell to hang out with, quite frankly. So I don't know. Do you want to mention sort of the editing of like 2 tracks?
I don't know if the audience cares about
Just
Drew
in case
running out of
there's a
space
blip.
in his file for the recording. I don't think it's going to show up that bad. I got to edit the episode or the rest of the episode later today. We did successfully retrieve all of the audio, I believe,
Yes,
but
we
I don't
did.
know if it's going to sound any different based on recording locally or recording to the cloud, which is pretty embarrassing. I'm going to fire Drew later.
It's been great, team.
This was one of our big ones. Like, she was like a hard guest to get. I've been talking about having her on for like over a year. Lots of other people book her. She's super
I
busy.
screwed
And
it
then
up.
Drew screwed up the recording.
No, we literally ran out of space on my computer mid-recording and then switched over to the cloud. So you shouldn't detect an interruption, but on the off chance that you do, that is what happened. I assure you we're talking to the same person for the entirety of this episode. But yeah, all that being said, head over to our website, sign up for our Discord, give Lyss a follow, look at her stuff, and enjoy.
We'll invite Lyss to join the Discord. I think she was a recent enough guest that she hasn't gotten that invite yet, but no promises that she has the free time to be on our forum.
Yeah, for sure. But if she's in there, she's family.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
Do you want to talk about Regis' hair? I mean,
This has nothing to do with anything. I just feel like I have to ask it because on your social media, he's kind of a secret, but like you do have a husband who exists that I know.
do have a husband that exists.
don't we all?
I was prepping for this episode and I was looking through your
Yeah.
website and looking at stuff. And I also wanted to like better understand what Regis's background was. Not that we're really going to talk about him on here, but when I creeped Regis a little bit, I found like just a mind-boggling discovery.
The man bun and the beard.
Yeah, because I've only ever seen Army Regis.
I was catfished.
I was about to say, you really got hooked, and yeah.
The guy I started dating in our masters had a beard, a man bun. He wore bedrock sandals and like sweater vest to work. He was like hipster
Pure trail
extreme.
dirtbag.
Do you have a
Like-
Subaru? Do you have a Subaru?
No, okay, I'm not. The thing about Regis though is he's super, super, super like OCD militant clean because he grew up as a military brat. So I'm thinking he's gonna have like this dirtbag clunker car. Now he has a Kia, but back then he had this pristine like Toyota Corolla that was like spotless, super clean. Because I remember the first time we were dating other people at the time, but he took me in his car to go to the coffee shop because we were working on like thesis stuff before we became mortal enemies to friends to lovers types trope that we have. And he had a book, The Gene, in the back of his pristine car. But he's like hipster dirtbag trail runner, living off tuna packets at the time. But yeah, he had this man bun hair thing, and he kept that up until the first year of our PhD, and he ran his first 100-miler race, and he said if he didn't finish this 100-miler, he was cutting his hair. And I was like, no, you're not cutting your hair. You're not cutting your hair. And he didn't initially at first. And then one day he told me he was going to the grocery store, and he came back and all of his hair was gone. But he didn't buzz it fully. It was like normal haircut, like Drew, like you have like, or I guess most of you have normal haircuts, like, you know, not long, but not short. And then COVID happened and he started jockoing his own haircuts and he just never went back. He says that, and I quote, "Nothing gets to be for me." So he just buzz his hair and that's for him. So it's not a military forced thing.
COVID was hard. COVID was hard for a
a-
lot of us, I think. So that's that's
He
fair.
just
If I don't know if Regis will end up listening to this or not, but Regis, if you're listening,
probably won't. Did you know he's blocked on my social media?
No.
You blocked him?
I blocked him into my masters before we were dating when he was my enemy.
Nice.
And I never unblocked him. He's been blocked this the whole time. He doesn't know what my business page looks like. He'll help me with like big business decisions on the back end, but doesn't see a single thing I post on Instagram. So
Hell yeah.
Wow.
I'll have to send
Well,
them the link to this
God,
because
and
he
they
will
say
know when it's
chivalry's dead, man. You know, like that's awesome.
if he's taken input from outsiders, I say bring the hair back. All like the beard, the whole thing.
Listen,
Listen.
Alex had a horrible mustache for a while, so don't listen
Well,
to
he
him.
can't even grow his mustache
Neither could Alex.
because they're not allowed. You're not allowed to have it past your lips or
No,
whatever.
that's about knowing when to break the rules.
Well,
Like, yes, by the book, it's stupid,
but he
but
got yelled at by one of his homie guys that are up above him, and you don't want to have a Hitler stash as a
well, he's getting out of the army,
That's
right?
true.
yeah, he's getting out. So
Perfect opportunity to go full dirtbag
Well,
again.
when he's jobless and can go full dirtbag, I asked him the other day. I was like, "Do you want a job?" And he goes, "I was like, will it hurt your like feelings if you don't have like how some people like they want to work like that's highly valuable to them.
Yeah.
I don't know how to relax, so I probably need to have a job." He's like, "No, I don't care." And I was like, "Okay, you can just be full dirtbag and like go for it, man." So we'll see. Maybe we'll make a comeback. But yeah, that was I've dated like 6 different versions of I don't even know what my taste in men is anymore because there's been like 6 iterations of like hair, bun, beard, mustache, every combo possible I've experienced. So I just now I'm married to Jocko's essentially.
I love this. Let's get down to business. Did
Yeah.
you beat Alec Blennis in a broad jump?
I did read like, listen, I have this thing with like doing the whole hybrid training thing where like I'm pretty fit compared to most people, but I'm not like the freak hybrid fits, like the people with like just the insane genetic
Like
anomaly
Alec.
potential, like Alec, right? Like, and that's not shit shading to Alec. Like I said this to his face when I met him in person. Like it's just like I'm not gonna be a 3-hour marathoner, right? I'm made to be a power lifter, probably Olympic weightlifter if I started earlier in life. Like maybe CrossFit could have been a little bit thrivey for me, but like I am just not whatever is in that man's DNA.
Yeah.
Orange juice and tofu jumped together. And yeah, but we did the training thing together and I beat him in the broad jump, which was like the greatest victory of my year. Like
What was the distance?
you know what, we didn't measure it. We were just doing like setting out cones. We were just doing it like it was just like my you do your plyos or your hops or your jump bullshit before you get into your lifting. And I'm training for Hyrox and I run a lot. So I've been doing like broad jumps and repeated broad jumps and all that shit. And I was just doing broad jumps that day. So it's like, this is what we're doing, Alex. And so we just set up a cone. And normally like in my garage, I don't measure the distance of what I'm doing because I just do the diagonal of my gym. So when I was in the gym we were training with, I just was like, oh, I'm just going to go and then come back and do it again. He's like, well, let's set up cones. And we should have measured it. We should have measured it. But it was pretty far. I don't know how far it was, but my fun fact is I haven't done a vertical jump test in years, but when I was in college, an exercise science undergrad or whatever, I had a 24-inch vertical jump. Do you know how useless that is at 5'1"?
24-inch vertical jump?
Yeah, at 5'1". Completely useless. No benefit to that.
Yeah.
But so I would assume the broad jump was pretty good, but I don't know what a good broad jump is.
Was he sort of like downtrodden about that? Was he like
I think it hurt his ego a little bit. I think he went and worked on it.
ooh.
But Alec is better than me at everything else. So
That's fair. Yeah.
And this is if anyone's listening, I really like Alec a lot. I have a lot of high regards for
Well,
Alec.
he's been on. We love Alec, friend of
Yeah,
the
no,
show.
Alec is great.
Yeah.
But I definitely
If you guys came to a canyon, you would be more likely to make the leap than him, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think he went
That's
and
fine.
beat the broad jump eventually. He worked on his technique and skills. I guess he analyzed like my form was just technique was better with it, which makes
Mhm.
sense. I do a lot more of that. I don't actually know if Alec does anything like hoppy, skippy, jumpy in his training.
That's a good point.
Because he just has I think his tendons and Achilles are just made out of gold. I don't know what titanium. So he doesn't have to. So I don't know, but I think he literally slowed down the footage to break down the differences and then went and practiced it. So he probably could beat me now, but on that one day in March,
There it was.
there it was.
Boom.
So you talked a little bit about like what you're built for and what you train for and what Alec trains for and all that stuff. So I'm for the audience, and correct me if I'm wrong here. It seems like the things you're into lately are just like lifting for lifting's sake, then Hyrox and ultramarathons.
Yeah, I did the powerlifting thing and Olympic weightlifting thing for years. And I love being hybrid or whatever people want to call it. But like, I just got sick of just being strong for the sake of being strong. Like, I feel like you can do that for so many years and you're just like,
What am I doing?
you're just like, okay, I did it. Cool. Like, you just don't get that same high of going for the same deadlift PR for the 800th time 10, 15 years later as you do like every time you go run across the Grand Canyon or the start of an ultra. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different type of challenge. I don't want to seem like I'm poo-pooing a powerlifting or weightlifting or anything like that. But for me, I did that for a very, very long time. And so yeah, I really want to spend my 30s trying to actually be a better runner. I joke about me not being a good runner, but I have the potential to be a better runner than I am. I had an injury that set me back for a while there, which really impacted that. So I'm trying to come back from that. But yeah, I ran my first 100-miler last year, ran like 5 ultramarathons last year and kind of got back into ultras after some time off. And I'm doing the Hyrox things now. And I'm still training to be strong for the sake of being strong, but I don't care about being like, if I never deadlift 400 pounds again, like I'm gonna die happy. You know what I mean? Like I'm so sick of bench pressing. And I've realized no one's gonna ask me what my bench is anymore. No one cares. I'm a 32-year-old female. No one's gonna ask me my bench. I'm just like it just doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, I definitely am like strong for the sake of strong, but I get more excited now for like pushing different things and training like accessories or things that I haven't done before. Like I feel like that's been exciting for me. But yeah, you are correct. I'm lifting for the sake of lifting. And I am enjoying just having a really high capacity to do kind of whatever I want is kind of what I'm working for.
So how do you decide what you're training for then? Like when it's whatever you want, how do you decide what you want?
Yeah. So I am specific. I do want to add the disclaimer there for anyone listening. I definitely think if you follow me on social media, you can see that I'm pretty deliberate and intentional with like where I allocate my energy and time, even though I'm like hybrid training. There's definitely, I have this thing called like the seasons approach, or like being intentional about like where you're bringing up your deficits or gaps to kind of raise that overall capacity. So for me, I've had this historic baseline of being very strong and very muscular, and it's a lot easier to maintain that or bring that back up in between periods of other things when you already have that. So like I kind of have always kept with that for the most part. I would say honestly at this point in my life, my constant travel schedule impacts my gym performance more than like the endurance training or anything else that I'm doing. But I decided back two years ago, 2023 was the year I came back from injury, and I wanted to get back to the ultra marathon because I hadn't run an ultra in like 2 years between finishing my PhD and being injured. So I knew doing that my goal for the next year was 100-miler. So I kind of got back into like the swing of like a 2-year period of being really, really hyper focused on getting back to ultra marathons, working towards a 100-mile distance race. Like that was a very intentional period of time where like I pulled back all cross training because I had like an Achilles thing, which is super sensitive. So like I didn't do like any CrossFit stuff. I was just lifting, vert training, and running with the intention of just like getting back to ultra marathons, which I had done a bunch in my PhD. Now, coming off my 100-miler last year, though, and my injury and all that stuff, like all I had been really doing was slow training. Either I couldn't handle it because my injuries would freak out, so I just didn't do it. You can run slow for volume and run ultras. Like it's you don't really have to be fast to do ultras, right? But then I also I was just doing such high volume, slow training for my 100-miler. Like there was some intensity in there, but not the same as when you do shorter, faster stuff. And, my whole team has been doing these Hyrox races. Hyrox is really trendy. Hyrox is definitely something that probably caters a little bit more to like my kind of in-betweeny fitness. I'm short, so that doesn't help me. But something I'm preaching all the time to my clients who like to do ultras or marathons but want to get faster is like pick a period of time where you dedicate to like a shorter, faster, harder goal. So I kind of, instead of training for like a fast 5K or fast 10K, I kind of pseudo use the Hyrox training as a way for me to focus on deliberately bringing back down running volume, but driving up intensity specifically, because you're kind of training at that fast 5K to 10K efforts anyway for a lot of the Hyrox training. So it was kind of the perfect way. And they're fun. They're gimmicky. I know people want to crap on them. They honestly have been fun to do. I've enjoyed them.
People love those things.
I drink the Kool-Aid. I get it. I like it. I know a lot of people are like, are you just doing it for marketing? And in some ways for me, yes. But like my coaches were doing it. And I was like, well, it's fun, right? Like there's not as much pressure in a Hyrox race as there is in like when you're on a 100-mile starting line and so many things go wrong. Like you're just, if you screw up the day, then it's like, okay, you're done in like an hour. So, and you can do it again. Like you're going to drink a beer after and go home. So I've used the last from like November till now. So 6 months specifically and intentionally dedicated to the Hyrox training, prep, all that stuff. I'm doing my 3rd race here in New York in a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then I'm transitioning to my first road marathon, but that's kind of overlapping with like some trail stuff that me and Regis have planned for later this year. But I'm intentionally using the Hyrox stuff and then the marathon this year, which is ironic to say I'm using the marathon to get faster, because I want to get back to ultras next year, but I needed like a season of speed, more or less, just to get back what I lost from finishing my PhD and being injured. So I'm very methodical and segmented in the way that I approach these things. And my approach right now is really like, I have that strength baseline. I have increased my strength and some muscle between with the Hyrox training, bringing it back down that running volume, intentionally going into this year, trying to keep pushing training and running the whole time, the lifting while running the whole time, and then kind of like just tinkering that up where I feel like it seems fit. But I feel like I'm at a place now where I can maintain that as is, and I only push like certain things that I feel like I want to push because they're fun in the moment at this point in time. But yeah, that's kind of been my training approach the last 2 years, and then my kind of plan for the rest of this year and then into next year is hopefully get back to another 100 miler is the goal. So I definitely am seasonal and methodical, even though it seems like I'm doing all the things. But I definitely am very usually dialed in on like specifically where I'm allocating my energy and time, instead of chasing my tail and trying to do like 700 things at one time.
I want to add, this is like off the cuff because you were talking about Hyrox and it's all the hotness these days. For yourself, and then I guess for people that you've coached, and I'm more so curious your thoughts on this. Hyrox and CrossFit are sort of seen as these two competing philosophies, maybe. And for so long with CrossFit, because it was quote unquote unknown and unknowable, I think it sort of encouraged people and coaches to train for a lot of different things, expose themselves to a lot of different things. Because Hyrox is a set thing and you know the events, you know the parameters. Have you found as you've pursued that it like forces you to become less creative and more specialized, if that's fair to say, versus, man, having coached CrossFit for years and years and years now, anything's on the table, which is good and bad, I guess.
Yeah. So I have a CrossFit level 2, actually, and I actually like a lot of things from CrossFit. I get why people criticize it in certain things. I'm not like a
Hmm.
CrossFit diehard, but one of my personal training philosophies that I think ties into like the whole hybrid thing or whatever is that like I do think you should do kind of like a little bit of everything, to some capacity. Like I think there's good, like, do you all need to do ring muscle ups? I can't do them, probably not, but should you be able to do like body weight movement things and you know what I mean, strength and endurance, and like that's very much so my philosophy, and I do like that approach to CrossFit. But I do think with the Hyrox, it's either, it's well, for one, Hyrox is a running race. I know that there's
Yeah.
all the events, but Hyrox is way more of a running race than CrossFit. And it is predictable. So it's like if I train for a 10K, I know what I'm getting when I go to the 10K. Same thing with the Hyrox race. I do think like with my training, it definitely has been more as I get closer to the races. It is way more specific. Like I'm only doing lunges, burpees, wall balls, sleds,
Mm.
rowing, running. When I was training like more than that out from my approach to training, and what I usually encourage for my clients is like we have a lot of metcons and aerobic capacity work in our app and programs, and I usually encourage clients to like follow some of that variability. They can cherry pick a little in our app, but we change them every week. So like the encouragement is that you're kind of getting different things. Now, we don't have super high skill level stuff in there just because most of our clients can't do that. So I usually typically like kind of like with anything, broader, more general when you're not super close to an event, but then as you're getting closer to the event, being a little bit more specific with the metcons that are high roxy. But I
Mhm.
do think it's an in between, right? Because a lot of Gen Pop people wouldn't be training those types of things to begin with, so they are getting more broad versus like you are kind of specializing in certain events and things. But
Right, exactly.
it is still, there's enough variety in it though that you're still getting like a little bit of everything. The only thing that's really missing is like the high complex weightlifting and gymnastics, I would say, from training, which I like that power type training. I know not everyone can do it, but like even a dumbbell snatch or a dumbbell clean, you know what I mean? Like a ring row, like I think these things are great. So I think that there is some of that is missing, but I do think that it just depends on the lens that you're looking at from. It's definitely watered down from that lens of CrossFit, but it's specialized in specific and repeatable versus variable versus like now maybe though people who are only doing very monostructural things are potentially branching out to that. So I
Right.
think it's its own thing, right? But my coaching take would be like when you're not super close to the race, you should still have some broad variability within your training, and it doesn't need to be as specific. And you just really need to just focus on getting stronger and running better in the off
Mhm.
season, and then or like if your work capacity sucks, there's like mine did coming off of my 100 miler, like I had to like do a lot of metcon type stuff just to like not die from doing those types of things.
Yeah.
I think you have kind of answered this already. I just want to like make you put it in like a sentence or two, but you mentioned your seasons approach
Mhm.
earlier. Can you like define that and explain why you use that approach?
Yeah. So the biggest thing with hybrid training that I think gets bastardized in the online space is people think that like you're doing everything all of the time and it doesn't work because that's not how like fitness works. But like the the idea behind hybrid training, it's, I mean, think about how athletes train. They train in a seasonal approach. You have an off season, you have like a period of like GPP, general physical preparedness, preseason, in-season training, postseason. Like you have these seasons of different shifts of focuses of like, the strength and conditioning versus game time preparedness stuff. Like, and obviously this isn't exactly the same, but when you think about sports, classic strength and conditioning, there's usually like a seasonality approach there. You're not training for max everything at every point in time. You're allocating time, physiological resources, energy, like importance, things like that. And it's kind of like, I grew up playing lacrosse. So I just kind of adapted that to the way I approach hybrid training, so to speak. So like I kind of came up with this theory. I don't think it's like necessarily my own idea, but I just call it a seasons approach. And that's like what I've been working with my hybrid approach for years. And it's this idea that like hybrid training is, trying to balance these competing resources, right? And you're trying to allocate those intentionally. And you only have like so much of a bucket of whatever you can give. And the higher your fitness level is, the more you can give, the lower your fitness is, the less you can give. But you only have 100% to give, right? So over the course of a year or months or spaced off goals, you shift those resources to prioritize one thing over the other without giving up the other one entirely. That's where a lot of people make their fault, right? They only lift in this season or they only run here and they stop lifting. And the idea is that you're shifting to these seasons of specializing or focusing your resources more specifically to one thing and then going to the other. So for example, you have strength seasons. A lot of people who lack the strength baseline, a lot of runners, a lot of endurance people, they might need a strength season. That doesn't mean they have to stop running, doing endurance, whatever that looks like, but they might need a season where they're specifically dialed in on emphasizing that component of their training because they need more time, resources, recovery to go towards that thing versus like a race training or a race prep season. You might have a lot more resources being allocated to running prep, running things, and you're going to adjust your lifting to accommodate that, but you're not giving it up entirely. Then you have like the in-between seasons where they look a little bit more hybrid in nature, where you're kind of having a more even balance of both and you're kind of pushing both simultaneously, but one's not being driven up more than the other. Or like just recovery seasons as well, right? Where you're pulling back from things altogether, letting yourself recover, rest, rejuvenate before shifting into something. But you're essentially figuring out where you want to dedicate your resources. And my view of hybrid training is that the goal over time is to raise your floor and raise your capacity of what you can do. And you do this by not ever giving up one thing entirely, but you're kind of like tiptoeing as you go. Like you're increasing this thing a little bit while maintaining this and then increasing the other thing a little bit. And sometimes you can push both at the same time. Like true beginners are going to push both at the same time. People who kind of have a good balance between them in periods of time. Right now, I'm kind of pushing both at the same time, right? My running's not as high as it used to be. My lifting's not as high, but they're both moderate. So I am like pushing kind of both simultaneously. But one's not going to get better fast than the other, right? So the idea is though is to titrate these up over time while never fully giving up the other one and just raising your floor and your capacity. But you can't give 100% to both. Like hybrid training in the truest sense is trying to maximize both at the same time. You're not going to be a pure lifter versus a pure endurance enthusiast or whatever it is that you're doing. So the idea isn't to be your best selves on either end of the spectrum. It's to be your best self while being best at both of those kind of at the same time, right? And so that's why I like the seasons approach because it allows you to allocate those things or spend periods of time. Because hybrid training, a lot of time to get better at it is to spend time focus on the thing that you suck at, right? I'm a strong lifter. I'm good at lifting. I'm going to always be relatively strong. But I lacked work capacity and speed. And so I'm spending a dedicated period of time to doing the thing that I suck at so I can get better, but I will be better like across the board because I'm spending time on that specific thing, right? But I just spent like a year doing aerobic base building. I had a massive aerobic base. I don't need to be spending any more time on that right now, at least at this period in time, because that's not where my deficit or weakness or lack is. So sometimes it's what do you suck at, or sometimes it's what is the goal that you have, and where do we need to spend our time, resources, whatever it is, to raise that floor up a little bit more. And you kind of do that in a cyclical pattern. And they don't have to be specifically like a year. I usually just call a year is an easy way to frame things, but thinking about like, especially like in the traditional sense of I coach a lot of lifters and runners, is you have a base build phase, you have your race prep phase, you have your recovery phase, you have your strength phase, and they kind of cyclically kind of go into each other over an X period of time.
it feels like at this point we need to back up and explain something because we've talked a lot of like coaching approach and things like that.
Yeah, sorry. We're kind of all over with this.
This is how it
We
works.
could talk about this
It's
for
working as
hours.
intended. But I think before we go too much farther, can you explain your background just a little bit in
Oh,
terms of like
yeah.
what you
Nobody
researched?
knows who I
Yeah, can you
am.
say no, I'm kidding.
We didn't talk. We talked about my husband and not me. Yeah. So for people who don't know, yeah, I am Dr. Alyssa Olenick. I have a PhD in exercise physiology. Um, a lot of training in like energy systems, so like bioenergetics, like exercise and postprandial metabolism and female physiology and stuff like that. So, um, mostly my research is all in women's health, metabolism, and exercise, but I have a lot of knowledge in just like general exercise, muscle, mitochondrial, metabolic physiology as well. And so that's where all of this, like, they're listening to me talk and they're like, why is this bitch have an entire complex system for approaching training? Who is she? She's wearing a flower hat. What is she
We just
talking
met her
about?
today. She just wanted to
It's,
come on. So
sometimes the intro quote for the episode is like really obvious when it happens.
Yeah.
That's the
that
quote
was
right
the
there.
one right there.
Who's that bitch in a flower hat?
Yankees hat, nonetheless.
Well, I honestly, I only bought it because it has flowers on it. I don't actually, I'm not a Yankees fan. I literally bought it because it has flowers on it.
That's an
So
incredibly bold statement to just buy a Yankees hat for flowers and not Yankees. Well done.
you don't want to know how much this hat costs either. That makes it even all the worse. This, you guys have the Polly Pocket of physiology on right now is essentially what this podcast is. Maybe that's the title of
You
it.
should run with that one. That's a good one.
Polly Pocket of
She's been dropping. Drew's not really on social
He's
media
not
that
on
much.
social media.
So
But
I've put intentional limits because I've followed you for a long time,
It's
but I
okay,
was
Drew.
just talking to Alex. I only have
Okay.
30 minutes a day that I'm allowed to be on Instagram.
And you're
Otherwise, my
not spending it
computer
on Douglas
kicks
Fitness's
me.
page. You're not.
I'm
You don't
not.
want to be honest though, I don't really post for the dudes. I definitely strategically and intentionally post for the my ideal client. It's
It's
not
fair.
fake, but it's like I mean, Drew, I'm posting like Polly Pocket Power and wearing all pink outfits for my speed intervals. Like that just doesn't seem like that's your vibe. Like
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, I guess, but yeah, there's seasons for these things, like you said.
there's seasons
before we
So
for
miss the opportunity, her other big theme is silly goosing, and I have
I can
appreciated
get
the
behind that
content.
for sure.
Yeah. So my whole shtick is essentially like I work hard. Like it's funny. I'm wearing a flower hat. I'm talking about being a Polly Pocket. Like I'm running like I'm like run 100-mile ultra marathons and like I'm pretty tough. Like I have a PhD. Like I run a business. Like I'm not like this little whimsical fairy flying through life kind of. But yeah, the silly goose thing is all about. I mean, you work hard, but like who gives a fuck? Like we're just on this earth we're gonna die, so you might as well fuck around too at the same time. So yeah, like these are my isms on social media. Is like
I love that silly goose in it. We ought to, the military could use a little bit more silly goose. And I
you
was in
gotta
a
trust
brief
me.
today. They were talking about Camp Run Amok, and I might steal that one because I mean, that's good.
Silly goose time.
There,
Silly goose time.
I think the public affairs people for the military would rather the public not know about how much silly goosing happens.
There's a lot of
I think,
silly goosing, a lot of goosing going on in the
Don't
military.
don't.
Drew, there's multiple entire accounts dedicated to the silly goose behaviors at your installation specifically.
So
My,
maybe you just need
yeah,
to bring it too. I mean, I don't own Silly Goose, but like it's definitely become part of my brand identity, and Drew can become part of yours too.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Heard it here first, team. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Um, so this is a bit of a riff, but as you were talking, I know this is such an easy question to ask, the whole hybrid conversation, but like, I don't just want to know what the common mistakes are that you see. I want to know if you tend to see women make a certain type of mistake versus men make a certain type of mistake when it comes to hybrid quote unquote training.
So my clientele is definitely largely more women, which I thought for a while was only because of my female physiology background. But what I think is a lot more women do online training. I think a lot more women are inclined
Hmm.
to do personal training than males.
Why do you think that?
Because every coach that I know has a largely female roster, including my male friends and coaches have almost majority female rosters. And my coach that I like kind of business collaborate with that owns a gym that has a lot of male and female clients, majority of his clients are also women. So I think that there's something there. I don't have data to back that, but that's
Hmm.
something that like because I was trying to market more broadly and unisex, and then I realized that I was still largely bringing in women because we do have male clients, don't get me wrong, but I think that um, so anyway, the mistake that I see women make a lot is this because a lot of them come from this diet industry obsession with like burning calories and being thinner or controlling their bodies or obsessively using exercise. It's getting them to do less. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like getting them to do less, I think is the when we think about like hybrid training, because I think it also draws the people who want to do it all. And it seems hypocritical for me to say that when I'm exercising 8 to 10, 15 hours a week when I'm training for an ultra, but like you can do more, but I always like to say like volume is earned. It's not just like something that you can just do just to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that like really getting so for example, we have this program build that's like 3 to 4 days a week, a little bit more conjugate, mixed, like full body. They're like 75 to 90-minute lifts, right? With rest periods and the volume or whatever is inside of it. And we'll have people who want to do that on top of like a marathon program. And they will white knuckle that. They do not want, and I don't even do build. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to even touch that program with a 10-foot pole. Like I've done that style of training. I don't want that anymore. So I do think that like there's this type, not all women, but this type of woman who feels like because typically like hybrid training is kind of being like my approach to strength training with hybrid training is less but higher quality. So you're not doing a million exercises, you're not doing 4x10 everything, you're doing less volume but you're keeping it higher quality, higher effort. And we're seeing some of that in the muscle hypertrophy studies now. It's like 1 to 2 really hard sets get you like 80 to 90% of the way there, right? That kind of approach to things. Obviously, volume's still a factor, but like again, seasons approach, do build in the off season, like you know what I mean, kind of thing. So I think that there's a subset of women who really have a hard time with the idea that like less is more. To get like less but higher quality so you can actually recover and make progress, or like not wanting to give up like the intensity of all of their cardiovascular activities and running to trade out for that quote unquote zone 2 easier higher volume stuff. I see a lot of that. Now that's not everyone. I do also think with women there's a subset of like them who've never been exposed to athletic anything and they don't know how to push themselves or train hard and they're always afraid that they're like doing too much. That's more Gen Poppy though. But I think that with women I see that. I think with men I I feel like men are a little bit sometimes they're not as cognitively fluctuate with their training. Like they're not as I'm trying
Beautifully
to say
put.
this in a nice, not sexist way. Like
Be sexist about it.
they just kind of do what they're told, right? Like, and every guy kind of has that subconscious, like I could be an elite athlete in the back
Oh,
of their head
for
mentality.
sure.
And every guy thinks they're Nick Bear. Every guy somehow thinks they're Nick Bear, right? Like they all think that that's who they are and they are not. And I think that men on the counter are like afraid to do more cardio, right? Like
Hmm.
they're afraid to do the volumes of cardio and endurance that you might need because they come from such an ingrained like lifting culture kind of thing. Now that's not true of all of them, but I would say like that's maybe the opposite where you're seeing like like every guy who was a bodybuilder, I feel like 5 years ago, because bodybuilding isn't cool now, is a hybrid athlete now. And they're realizing that you have to run a lot. Like hybrid training is a lot more, it's like a lot of endurance with a little bit of strength rather than being 50-50, which I think a lot of people don't realize. So I think that's kind of like I don't work with as many males directly, but like all my coaches are males that are in the hybrid space. And I think a lot of them, they really had to realize that they had to do a lot more endurance and a lot less strength in their like powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting days in order to like balance it a little bit more. But they weren't like dramatic about it. They were just like, cool, okay, like this is what I do now kind of thing. But I will say again, because my clientele is like 90% women, there is that hey, what if we didn't try to work out twice a day, 6 days a week, and eat 3 crumbs for a snack and a whiff of coffee and actually like ate and trained in a performance kind of way?
It's funny you say that because I'm thinking now about folks I've worked with, and especially in the hybrid, I guess I would lump sort of tactical athletes into the hybrid bubble. The male clients always feel like they can get by with not much running. Oh, a 50 mile or whatever. I'll just like tough it out. And then
Yeah, no, yes, yes.
the women I've coached are always like, are you sure we've done? I don't feel like we've done enough. I feel like I need to
Yes.
do more miles. That's interesting that you've seen that too.
No, and that's exactly what I mean. There's like this, like, because I see it in my
I'll be
YouTube
fine.
comments.
I'm
I
just
see it in my
fucking.
YouTube. I have a YouTube video that got pretty good traction of like how to train for your first 50K. And I put like my minimum standard that I would suggest would be like at least 30 miles a week or at least like 6 hours of time on feet training, which I don't think for a 50K is an egregious minimum suggestion for training. Like when you think of a long run, that's like typically going to be at least 3 hours at the longest. That's like an hour less runs, a couple, like that's not like an obscene recommendation, right? And I have a thread of these guys in the comments telling me like, don't listen to this girl. I trained for 6 weeks. You don't have to train at all. I just decided I was gonna, and I'm like, but it's only the guys. It's only the guys. But then yeah, the contrary is my female clients are like 2 weeks out from a race they've been training for a year now, all their training. They're like, are you sure? Are you sure? I mean, this is me. I throw up at the starting line of races because I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And then I'm fine. I'm over prepared. Right. And yeah, that's exactly what it's either the, I want to do enough, or it's the, like, I can't trust that I can do less to like have the same results. But yeah, that's exactly it. They think that they're going to wake up and just be able to do a 50 miler because they can. And you know what? Half the time they do through sheer stupidity and the grace of God.
Silly goosing. They're just silly goosing it out there.
Yes.
So the military in particular has a problem with, like, if you were just mentally tougher, you would do that 50K right now.
It's like
and not worry
cultural.
About it.
Yeah. Like you don't need to train. You're in the
military also has like an overwhelming lower body overuse musculoskeletal injury crisis going on. So like those two things might have a little bit to do with each other.
Yeah, probably. I would suspect.
So the question I kind of want to ask, we've been talking around hybrid athlete and hybrid training for a while, and I'm curious because like the military is a world where you have to have some endurance and some strength, and like the military has been doing that since there have been militaries.
Yes.
And so is hybrid athlete just like a marketing scheme to overcomplicate well-rounded health and fitness?
Well, it just depends who you're asking, right? I think that to answer that is yes and no, right? Like I think it's yes and no kind of thing. I think too many people lump in any type of training that has more than one modality as hybrid training. And I do that in my own marketing. Like my slang for my business is hybrid on your terms, because the idea is that hybrid, quote unquote, hybrid is going to look different on everyone. Everyone has different priorities. They have different goals. They have different desires for allocating their training. Like it's hybrid because it's both, but it really is just like concurrent training of some degree. So but then true hybrid training is like the Alec Blennis, right? Like the truly maximizing these two things at an insane level at the same time, right? Like I would even say like CrossFit Games athletes are probably potentially more hybrid than even the hybrid rock stars of Hyrox. You know what I mean? Like, because Hyrox is definitely favors the endurance athlete a little bit more. So like, I think that there is a true hybrid niche bubble, people who are kind of maximizing this, like the 500-pound squat, 5-minute miler things that people are doing. Like these are like true hybrid goals. Versus like I kind of put hybrid training on a spectrum. You know what I mean? Like there's a spectrum of deviation around that. So like I would say though, military stuff is probably more hybrid in nature because you are having to have pretty high, just depending on your job or whatever, you know what I mean? Like higher levels of endurance, but also like decent amount of strength. But you're not going to be like the strongest guy who ever existed because you probably can't handle that body fat percentage on top of that strength at the detriment of your endurance kind of thing. So it probably falls closer on the spectrum to hybrid training, I would say. Like, I mean, again, the disclaimer for this podcast, guys, is my husband's in the military, but I know nothing. But like the performance test does kind of generally across the board, you have to have, you know, a breadth and somewhat of a depth of fitness to like maximize that, so to speak. So, you know, I think it's yes and no, right? Like, I think that everyone's calling everything hybrid training anymore. Like, if you do one set of bicep curls a week, but you're mostly a runner, are you really hybrid trainer? No. But are there people potentially maximizing both of those? Yes. Is the powerlifter who has decided they don't want to die of cardiovascular disease a hybrid athlete? No. But like, that's okay. Like, that's just health and fitness. And I agree with that in the sense of that being a shtick on social media. But I do think that there's a lot of hybrid hate because there are people and subsets that are truly trying to like optimize and maximize these competing goals at the same time. So yes and no.
Did Regis use your methods to prep for his ACFT?
No, because he doesn't use my no, that's a lie. That's a lie. Well, right now I'm personally training him. I am personally training him. Because he's been hurt. And so now he came to me. And I'm like, interesting. But before this, he hurt himself trying to rock what's the Baton Death March thing? He was doing it remotely and he hurt it. His back was hurting before that, but then that like really, because if your back's hurting and you go and try to rock 26 miles, typically that's a volume tolerance.
Just like a Tuesday in the Army, really, if you think about it.
Can we clarify? Like, I know we're not getting too specific about who Regis is, but like, isn't his job military injury prevention?
Yes. Listen, this man, I love him so much. He loved my life.
Bless his heart.
I would die for him. I'm going to say that publicly on the podcast. He doesn't know that. But like, he's definitely a like, I know better person and then does not know better when he does. Like I tell him things that he knows. Like we have both have PhDs in exercise physiology in the same lab and methods, and I'll tell him things. I'm like, he'll be like, no. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, literally, yes. So anyway, I don't think he was going to explode that bad from doing it. Like I think he just thought, oh, this has been hurting, like whatever. So anyway, he was doing one-on-one training with one of my hybrid bro coaches before that, which that's not what hurt him. I don't want to be like, we're hurting our clients. Regis just I don't know what he did. He just like did something weird one day and he already had this lingering underlying thing.
Just getting old. Just getting old.
But he wasn't a TLM convert until the past year. He wasn't. He was I do washed up bodybuilding and CrossFit that I made up on my own.
That's like the gateway drug to the whole hybrid thing. I used to be a bodybuilder. CrossFit seems fun. Boom. Now you want to run an ultramarathon.
Well, Regis is more of a runner. So fun fact about him, though, is he hates exercising. He has a PhD in exercise physiology. He hates exercising. He just likes being in shape enough to go outside in the woods for a very long time. So
I get that.
He's an ultra runner more than he is anything else. But the man's not built to be an ultra runner. The man is built to like lift heavy objects if he actually really wanted to. For people listening, he's like 6'2", 220 pounds. Like he's the opposite of me.
Classic runner.
Jocko. Yeah. So he hates it. He hates lifting. He's not hybrid at all. He's like, do enough strength that my body doesn't fall apart and go run 60 miles a week. Like that's his ideal training situation, kind of thing. So, but I mean, he does pretty good on his ACFTs. I can deadlift more than him, but like he doesn't have to deadlift more than me.
Called out.
Wow.
He just doesn't want to. Like he just does enough to be strong enough. But we do have a nice trap bar. Specifically, not that you don't train specifically for the ACFTs. I like to clarify that.
Correct
that's
answer.
Against the rules. But like, but we got a trap bar because he prefers to.
She says she knows nothing, but she knows the only line of Army fitness policy that the rest of the Army doesn't know.
Well, he calls people out on all the time because he doesn't train for it specifically. He just like does his regular fitness kind of thing. But he does say that people will do that, and that's against the rules.
I am going to vent here. Regis is going to hate this. I hate it too. I'm actually like on my other screen. I'm editing like a recommended change to the policy to send in.
It's not while we're recording. This is in other
Yeah,
time.
Of course.
Yeah.
It was right before we were recording, though. I was literally working on it up until you joined the call.
I was like, that's impressive.
That sentence of policy is actually going away on June 1st. Like there's a few lines of really important policy in Army Regulation 350-1, and they're updating it, and they condensed it a lot, and the shorter version removed all the important stuff about fitness, and I'm very mad.
I was going to say this is totally bringing back the conversation, but it made me think of this. I have a lot of clients who do really well on their ACFTs or like police or fire performance tests, which are kind of similar, I guess, with my training methods, but we don't specifically train them. We just generally prepare them kind of thing. But
hey, there's something going on there. Yeah,
there's something going on there. But all that to say, I have a really nice trap bar now. So
it's not the Eleiko open bar, is it? I want one of those in my garage.
No, we have all rogue everything. We're so bougie. That was a Regis choice, though. I was like, do you want a ball on a budget? And he's like, no, we're getting the nice gym stuff. This is forever. I was like, okay.
That rogue hex bar, though, is only 59 pounds, which is such a bizarre number to land on. And it's frustrating as far as the math is concerned. Unless they've changed it on the website, because for years it was 59 pounds.
I'm not going to lie. I've been tracking it at 60 pounds this entire time. So I've been off. I've been lying.
It could be me, though. I could be off.
All right, before we go too far down a rabbit hole,
I was going to keep going. I'm going to let you.
I'm going to reel it back in for a second.
Reel us out.
Is this what happens when you interview me at my bedtime? We're gonna.
I was diving right down there with you, Alex. Pull us out of that.
So this is like risking going down a different rabbit hole, and it reflects on what we were talking about before. But have we over scienced fitness? Because I feel like if you're on social media talking about fitness, everybody's like citing PubMed IDs and like back and forth about like, does the research support this program, whatever. And it seems like when I'm out in the real world, like not on social media, interacting with humans who need help with their fitness, if they just like kind of tried sort of hard pretty consistently, like all their problems would go away. But the internet is too busy. Like
sex sells, Alex.
If you notice, honestly, if you pay attention to my content, like I do use science to inform my content, but it's a lot more like general physiological principles rather than like hard cut studies of things. And sometimes I think it's because I'm definitely more of a broad concepts girly. For being a scientist, I'm like not a super in the weeds nitty. Like I can understand that and read it and appreciate it, but like at the end of the day, and I'm like, okay, well, who gives a shit? Like, okay, that study basically just told us that if you train hard and push hard, it works again. Like, okay, like sometimes I get a little cynical. I do this in the health fit space too. I'm like, oh no, another clinical trial that says exercise is good, but most people are still not exercising. Shucks, whatever will we do? Like, I get a little cynical. I don't share this side of my opinions on social media. You guys are really getting
The
7 p.m.
exclusive. Hell
the
yeah.
7 p.m. thoughts here. But yeah, I think I don't. There's like that bro circle handshake thing going on where they're all just yelling at each other and fighting with each other. There's that thing in the other side of fitness too, in the nutrition. I just try not to. I try not to stay out of the wars. I don't have the time. I'm here to grow my business and be a Polly Pocket. I don't want to fight with you guys about PMIDs, but I do think that there is a side of it where, there is that like optimization crew who gives a heck about that stuff kind of thing. But I do think that like sometimes for like 99% of people, it doesn't matter, and we're all fighting and nitpicking and telling general pop people how they've done everything wrong over like one myopic tiny detail. So yeah, I agree with you. Like if you train pretty hard most of the time and you follow like the pretty standard physiological principles that we know mostly work, like do those fine-tuned details help sometimes to inform things as you progress up levels of fitness, right? Like we'll give the hybrid training example here. That's ironic. I have an alarm at 7:30 that tells me to stop working.
Bye. See ya. Thanks for coming.
And I don't listen to it. And so, for example, like the optimal hybrid training split type thing, or balance of lifting and running, like everybody wants to know that. Or like even the zones thing, like people want to optimize that so much. But like before you get to the point of where that stuff even matters based off like what the studies say, because everyone wants to know what the studies say. It's like, well, what can you even do, or are you doing, or are you able to do kind of thing first? And I think that's where a lot of that stuff gets lost. And I see this in like not just the optimization science field of like lifting stuff or zones, or like you see it in health and nutrition. Like it's people are just talking over people's heads to be right and argue with each other. And then the regular people don't know actually. Can I swear on your podcast?
Fuck no.
It's a military podcast.
They don't know what the fuck to do because they're so worried about optimizing everything when they literally like their life is the most suboptimal thing. So I think that like there's degrees of this, right? Like for me, I fucked up my weekly split last week and it blew me up. And I shouldn't do that again. And I had to pay for that this week. And that's because of like I was training at like a kind of higher level, right? But if I was only exercising 4 hours a week, it probably wouldn't have mattered. Like that would have never mattered or ever happened, right? You know what I mean? Kind of thing versus like, oh, I put two hard days back to back and I shouldn't have done that and impacted recovery and like, you know what I mean? Like that there are degrees of this optimization kind of thing. But like we have people like in my DMs panicking because their heart rate drifts into zone 3 when they run up a hill. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Or like, like there's degrees of like people who are like, oh, you're running 10 hours a week, but they're all at 170 beats per minute. Maybe let's pull some of that back. You know what I mean? Like there's these varying degrees of freedom of like where the science matters. And yes. So anyway, yes, I agree with you for the most part, other than like the caveat of like, sometimes these things can be helpful to inform as you move up the pyramid of specialization of what you're doing or higher volumes of training. But yeah, we have the general pop people just completely confused because they're trying to optimize all of these weird little things when they're like living off of like chicken nuggets and iced coffee and sleeping 4 hours a night and like stressed like out the wazoo, right? Like sometimes I forget how like locked in my lifestyle is until I just see like how regular people live. And that's not a shade to regular people, but I forget like how like, you know what I mean? Like what it's like when you are. So like I sleep enough, I eat pretty well. Like you know what I mean? Like I do manage stress and have social relationships and support. So my training does work pretty well because of that. Like I forget sometimes what other people are doing that is just so suboptimal. And we're just yelling at them in podcast virality, how like they're destroying their training because of some stupid little tiny thing from a single study. So yeah, sorry. I ranted around that a lot, but I get really annoyed with my fellow science peers. I think they're making it worse because everyone wants to yell and fight with each other instead of actually helping people.
She says she doesn't know anything about the military, but she essentially just described all of the military's problems.
But I think that's just all of humanity's problems.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All I know is that my husband gets up at 4:30 in the morning to go teach freaking PT, and it pisses me off. And that's all I know about the military. That's all I know.
Fair.
Which he basically does have them do CrossFit, if you're wondering, is basically what he has them do. So
I'm waiting for Drew to ask his question.
No, you were gonna.
I hope I answered that question. I know
that
I
was-
kind of tangent
no,
rant.
I have a riff. Okay, here, I'm gonna ask this. You have your PhD, so I trust your opinion on this.
I know
Alex and
everything.
you know everything. Alex and I have bitched and moaned now for 2 years about like the disconnect between sports science and sports real life, and coaching and athletes and this whole world here that like does the thing doesn't often refer to the folks over here who are doing the research and publishing the studies and yada yada yada. Like, what's your take on that disconnect? And you've seemed to navigate it quite well. I mean, you've been on the academia side, you're on the practitioner side. Where are we at, just like from a global perspective, on how to make a better, I don't know, bridge between what we're publishing and what we're doing?
Yeah. So I think this comes from two issues. The people who have time to be on social media all the time don't have time to be doing science kind of thing. And scientists are already so overloaded and so overwhelmed that a lot of them aren't doing scientific. We need more me's. And I don't say that in like an arrogant, like I'm better than everyone type thing. Because
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I have peers that are doing it too, right? So I sit around with this like guilt that I'm a failed scientist because I'm not in academia, publisher, parish, NIH institutions. But like a lot of scientists aren't good at doing what I do, right? Like that's the truth. They're not great science communicators. Where I think that's where I'm stronger at that than maybe I am even as a scientist. Versus you have the Gen Pop coaches who literally don't understand basic physiological principles, giving people advice and guidance off of like vibes. And so we need more of those like middle ground people, I think. And there's just like, I try not to like shit on scientists for not doing more communication because often they're just overloaded. They're working a ton. They're worrying about funding. They're worried about, you know what I mean? Like keeping their labs and all this stuff. So like, that's not like their job isn't like it's to do free labor, right? For the public kind of thing. They're already doing a lot to get science out there versus, there's a lot of good science that's hidden in the Ivy Tower or behind paywalls, or people don't know how to actually read and interpret it. So I do think that, and it's not just me. Like you don't have to have a PhD to do this. I think I have a lot of peers who have bachelors or masters who are just like very, very well self-studied like coaches and trainers who do invest their time and resources into doing this. And I do think that there's more of this now. It's just less loud. But I think we need more of those middlemen. And I have some peers that are PhDs that do work in the industry that do a good job at this, who understand the science at that high level, can interpret it pretty rapidly and synthesize it at a pretty quick rate and get that out there for people in a way that isn't. What's hard nowadays is like you can't get anything out there unless you do it in like a clickbait, viral, kind of catchy half truth.
Like the name of this podcast.
Yeah, I don't actually know what your podcast means.
No. The Zone 2 cycle syncing hybrid training.
That's kind of what a mops and mo is.
Most people don't. That's fine. Yeah, it's the worst for clickbait.
Yeah, and it's so like, but this is where scientists have to kind of get over themselves. Is like, you probably noticed that I do this a little bit. Like, you have to be clickbaity with integrity. Right, is what you have to do. You have to get over the idea of being this cringy clickbaity, getting people to do things for clicks or to drop a comment to get a thing sent to them. Like you just have to get over that. Like you have to talk to people too and use the language that they speak, right? So like I don't post to my fellow scientist. I post to my ideal client and person that I can help using the link. So when I say balance, lifting, and running, I want to put daggers in my eyes every time I say that. If I say sync to your cycle, yeah, I want to light myself on fire. But that's what people say, right? If I say your heart rate's spiking when you do zone 2, people know exactly what that means in the moment, even if it doesn't matter that they don't need that information. But then I can Trojan horse them with what they need to know, right? Like that's how so it's just like, it's a skill. Like to learn how to communicate that stuff is a skill. But also I think that, coaches, trainers, people working with the public, like it's your job to also find ways to keep up with that. Like you don't need to be reading scientific journals, but there's so many places for you that have credible things where the research is synthesized for you So you're kind of keeping up and learning with it. And so much of it is free and readily. Like how many people like me are out there just popping off podcast or YouTube
Mhm.
videos for literally free that you can listen to improve your just knowledge or keep up with things. And there's people who do like there's mass research review or like all of those other ones. Like there's ways to do that. And I do think that there is like, a side of you that should be keeping up enough with things so you at least know when you should be revising your approaches to things or can explain to the people around you something in a credible way. So then you're not just spreading this third hand poor telephone misinformation. So I think it's like an industry wide thing, but I think it comes from better relationships with like people who have RDs or PhDs or DPTs or whatever it is up high, not poo-pooing the coaches and trainers below them because we need both, right? Like just because I have a PhD doesn't mean I'm better than the person who's a on the floor strength coach or gym coach. Like I need them to do their job well in order to communicate the things that I do well in my job and vice versa kind of thing. So
Mhm.
I think that's where, we have to have this kind of mutual relationships and responsibilities and or things. And I don't think we're going to get better healthcare integration of this stuff anytime soon to have this coming from like your doctor and the medical side for these things. So I do think the avenue is probably through coaches and trainers and things like that. But yeah, I think it's just getting more scientists that can communicate and getting more coaches who are willing to continuously learn and not
Mhm.
just chase the algorithm. Do both.
So I thought we were going to spend more of the episode on this. We're getting towards the end of it, so I want to at least
It's okay.
She's
squeeze
done
it
at
in
It's
a little
okay.
7:30.
bit.
We're 9 minutes past.
Yeah.
We chatted so much in the beginning we can go over. At this point, I stayed up since 10:30 last night updating my website. So like you're fine. It's you're good. I screwed my sleep schedule this week
Before
already.
you joined the call, Drew was complimenting your website to the point of he said he's going to go redo our entire website now that he's seen yours.
Which I
So
just
whenever you
redid
can-
it last week. So it's like,
Which
Yeah.
one? Which
shit.
website? The Doc List Fitness or the List Method one?
I'm on
I-
doclistfitness.com.
Oh. Everybody go to that website. That one I wasn't updating
You have
yesterday.
two?
I have two websites. I'm pretty legit, Drew. A lot has changed since you set your social media boundaries.
That's
I
fair.
Last year we split my websites into two because there's two sides of me. There's Polly Pocket Silly Goose
What's
Princess,
the other one?
thelistmethod.com, and then there's Serious Doctor Alyssa Olenick that doesn't have a fun brand because she's
.com?
she's a
Serious
professional.
doctor. Oh, that would.
thelistmethod.com. That's my training programs.
Well, folks, for people who want to find you, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, but I have two websites. But thank you. I put a lot of money and time to those websites, so I really appreciate the compliments because sometimes this is my shit talk to the everyone. Nobody goes to your website and they just
Oh, we know.
things that
Yeah,
are
they
on the
just.
website, and the website costs so much money and time, and it's you work so
I don't think
hard.
I don't think websites are much longer for this world, to be honest with you. I don't think people want that much information. They have to
I think I'm
scroll,
gonna have to start
click.
I'm gonna start like having to zap links into people's brains at this
Yeah,
point in
they
time.
just want Instagram arguments. That's what Alex is good at.
Mm.
I know, and I don't want to do that. I have too much Instagram trauma from 2019 through 2021 that I try to avoid all conflict because I just don't have the nervous system regulation for it.
That's fair.
Buzzword,
My
buzzword.
biggest problem professionally and personally is that I attend every fight I'm invited to.
I'm pointing on my screen. I'm pointing at Alex. I don't know if that's where I'm pointing on yours, but
You're pointing at me, but I don't
Sorry.
fight anymore. It's okay.
Alex is for folks listening. If you want to ruin Alex's day, just hit him up on the DMs with a different opinion.
I have gotten much better at ignoring 90% of the DMs. So I'm sorry to all you guys out there, but we've said it before. If you want an actual conversation, send us an email.
Don't email me. Don't message me. I'm just kidding.
See,
So-
exactly.
The question I wanted to ask,
Sorry.
again, I thought we would spend more of this episode
It's
on the
okay.
topic. This has been
Drew's
fantastic
breaking my heart
anyway.
anyway. It's okay.
But women's specific fitness stuff. That
Yes.
space has grown in popularity recently. It's a lot of people talking about it, a lot of people coming at it from different angles. What are people getting right and what are people getting wrong? Because that's kind of like your academic expertise and
Yeah.
the area you focused on professionally. So
Yeah. So, my cliff notes here on this is most stuff out there is garbage, but there is validity to the fact that like there are some sex differences. Women aren't, men, you know what I mean? But we are, like I said at the beginning of this podcast before we hit start, like we're not a different species. We still adapt to the same physiological principles. Like people in the online space try to make it seem like we don't adapt to cardio and we don't adapt to strength training. Like we do. Pretty similarly, there's slight differences in little things, but most of the sex differences aren't making these big oversweeping differences in performance or physiological considerations for training, other than the fact that like typically men just have more muscle or bigger hearts or higher VO2s. Like there are those differences that are valid. Like it's not like we're like exactly the same kind of thing. But most of the stuff around training differently or training around your cycle or menopause specific training plans, like none of that stuff is real. It's really usually just either horribly bastardized, terrible fitness advice that leaves women undertrained, which negatively impacts health or performance, or it's just strength and conditioning with a pretty bow and says for women, strength training, protein, and hit intervals, but that's for women. Don't train like a man, but that's like literally what men are doing, or they're just free soloing 50 milers, I guess. But like that's really what it's come down to in the online space, and most of that isn't necessary. The biggest things I think, though, for consideration, this is especially important for your podcast, though, thinking about military, is low energy availability. Like if there's anything that actually deserves the attention for like female specific differences from a physiological standpoint, is there is this greater sensitivity for energy deficits and having higher risk factors for like bone stress injury, injury in general, loss of menstrual cycle, disrupted menstrual cycle, loss of ovulation, all of these things that happen. That is probably the biggest thing. Like I have this pyramid of like importance for female physiology that I like. It's funny. I made this and then it like got published in a paper a couple months later, almost identically. So I was like, yes, my ideas are backed by the experts. You know what I mean? Like the scientists that have been around for a while. So they're like the experts. So say essentially like when I think about like what's important for females, the base of it is like macronutrient and caloric intake, hydration. Like, are you eating enough, sleeping, recovering, all of those things? But like, are you bringing in enough energy into your body to support not just daily physiological function, but like what you're expending during physical activity kind of thing? And then from there, it's like managing stress, micronutrients, like, you know, the little like things for health, right? Like, are we actually taking care of our health there? And then so basically follow a sensical program, because you will not know how your hormones or your cycle or your perimenopause or your menopause is affecting your training if you don't have consistent training. How do you even know what it's affecting, right? Like you can't have any pattern recognition if there is no pattern, right? Kind of thing. And so follow good programs though. Like I think if a lot more women trained like men, the men who train well, we'd actually be better off. I know that's like pitchforks and fire type
Uh-oh.
approach, but like I mean, I'm not going to pinkify it for you. Like, I'm not going to just sell it to you with a pink bow that says strength training and like interval training is in protein and creatine is for women. Like, that's what men are doing. Like, that's logical. Like, it's good training advice. Gain muscle, condition the muscle, feed your muscle. Like, that's pretty smart approaches to me, right? And then from there, we can consider hormones and individuality, which usually go hand in hand. We just don't have enough data right now to tell us how to explicitly adjust or support or change things for the menstrual cycle. And there might be small things that we can do and consider, but so much of that comes out in the wash of just like auto regulation of like adjusting for your own personal RPE or zones during the day. There are little things that might be more true. Like a lot of women perceptually feel like they have higher RPE or higher pain or poor performance in the late luteal phase into menstruation. A lot of data, interestingly, is showing that I think another study actually just came out on this from one of Stu Phillips' grad students. There's one that came out a few years ago too, looking at this, and essentially like it appears that it's more cognitive in pain perception than actual physiological output, which I always say like doesn't mean that your perception is invalid. It is valid, but that doesn't mean that like you're physiologically less capable. But like pain tolerance and performance, like those will go hand in hand. So like the solution there isn't to change like this cycle syncy, you do full rest this week, hit and heavy workouts, Pilates and yoga, full rest into your menstrual cycle because you're a delicate little baby, and then like only train 2 weeks out of the month, right? Kind of thing. Like that stuff is like really bunk. Like that's not appropriate at all. These women undertrained. It's backed by no physiological principles. It's also backed on this idea that like women all have the same 28-day menstrual cycle, and we do not. Follicular phases and luteal phases and occurrence of ovulation are all at different periods of time. It's most women are tracking this. So it's just giving this one size fits all approach that like even if you know exactly what phases of your cycle are in, we don't have the data right now to inform how you should even change things anyway. Or the things that you would change, autoregulation would take care of. So say the literature that shows maybe hypertrophy is better in the follicular phase, like the 1.5 studies that kind of show it that are okay designed, not really. Say that's true. Say you feel better during those 2 weeks of the month. So you push harder at the same RPE because you can handle more because you feel great. Guess what? You accounted for that. Say in the luteal phase or the premenstrual phase or even your menstrual phase, like you feel worse. Your RPE of the same level, the weight is down, or you have to cut a set or whatever it is, like that takes care of that. And you're adjusting back the volume. Like, for example, I blew up my legs last week. We talked about that, right? The other day. So yesterday I didn't change my workout this week. I did my speed intervals and my leg day yesterday and Tuesday, like I do every single week. I prioritize the running because that's my main goal. But in my workout, I just cut I cut my front squats from 12 reps to 8, and I did 2 sets instead of 3. And then I skipped my lunges. And my legs feel great. They feel fine today. I just had to pull back on that volume to make space for recovery. But like that had nothing to do with my menstrual cycle or where I'm at or whatever. It's just good. That's a good training approach, right? I'm not recovering. I need to create space for that in my thing. I increased my nutrition. I took an extra rest day on Monday that I normally do, and I just created space for that in my training. That's the same, like just taking a day off or pulling back a little bit because your menstrual cycle isn't cycle syncing. That's just like, hey, I slept like shit last night, so I don't feel like I have it in me to do tempo threshold intervals. Maybe I'm just going to swap that out for a zone 2 workout today. Like that's just like appropriate responses to a lot of factors in life kind of thing. And there's little things here and there, like there may be a role for increasing nutrition, maybe in the luteal phase. And I always tell women, if you feel crummy and your performance feels like shit, eat more carbs before your workouts or during them. And a lot of people, that performance decrement can go away. Similarly, sleep might be more impacted in the luteal phase. And I think that's where we probably also are seeing some of these impacts on performance, is just people are sleeping more poorly potentially, then that can impact things or how you feel the next day, right? When you sleep like shit, you crave more stuff. You're probably not feeling super primed for the gym. That's something that you can support. The one area that I think has kind of okay data that I feel confident in saying adjusting things for is like there is some thermal like regulation stuff that might be impacted in the luteal phase. So like if you're using zones or training in heat, it's very military, like hot heat environments. You might need to think about fluid, salt, and or like cooling approaches. You might not be as good at thermally regulating during that phase of the cycle. So you might have to adjust to go slower or focus on cooling and hydration protocols more specifically during that phase of the cycle. And that's not like, I feel like sometimes now the cycle syncing space has gotten so like nothing matters, nothing needs to change, nothing is real. And I'm like, okay, well, like women still want to understand why they experience certain things. So like, let's still explain to them, like, if you are experiencing this, maybe adjust this or account for this. Like, I think that sometimes that gets lost in the evidence-based cycle syncing space and makes it seem like that doesn't matter. You're stupid for thinking that. And I'm like, okay, well, like women are having these real experiences. Let's explain to them what's happening or why that might be happening, or, it's not fake. Or, hey, you know what? Like micronutrient metabolism might alter across the month. So maybe increasing things like zinc and or magnesium and potentially iron, if you're lower on it, might help aid in these things. Like this stuff isn't like super ludicrous. It's not like but there's a difference between that advice and guidance and like change your workout every single week of the month kind of thing. But really, to wrap that back up though, like the biggest thing is making sure you're fed. Like the energy availability thing, I think, is the most important thing outside of like, this is outside my niche in space, like pelvic floor considerations, especially for like women, postnatal or across the lifespan. I think it's important in general too. Like those are the two areas where I think women deserve more attention and care, of like knowing that those are really important for them. But again, like, yeah, that's important for everyone, but those are spaces that you see more issues arise with that in women. So everyone wants to adjust their menstrual cycle, but nobody wants to eat enough, right? Kind of thing. So
To like kind of put a bow on that, sort of. I know Drew's about to like close out the episode with some quick hitters, but I've said this a million times before on the podcast. One of the things the research side struggles with is figuring out how much different things matter in relation to each other. And like practitioners have to figure that out. Like that's the most important thing for practitioners to figure out. So she just described a bunch of like in the weeds research on thermal regulation versus like receptiveness to intensity versus volume at different times, yada, yada, yada. But the takeaway is that, yes, those things are all happening and they do all matter, but also a million other things are happening, like stress from work and stress from family and how good a night's sleep you got the last night and what the weather is outside, all these other things. And so the only way to really account for how much those things matter in relation to each other is auto-regulation. Like, this is how I feel right now, so I'm going to train this way because of it.
Yeah.
Big fans.
Yes,
Big fans.
lots of complicated things are happening at the same time, and it's cool to understand those and have people researching them and dive deep on whatever you're interested in. But like at the end of the day, the practical ramifications are you're in a complex system. Your body is a complex system. You have to be able to simplify that and take like practical action without worrying about the nuances of all these other factors.
And the thing I always tell women is, one, you're more than your hormones. The internet makes it seem like your hormones are running your entire life. And they are for all of us, but we're more than just like sex hormones. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that are impacting all of this stuff, right? Like I took a rest day today instead of tomorrow because I've just been exhausted. And I worked a lot last week. Stress was high. And I knew like my cognitive load, I just was like, I just need a day. Like I just need a day. I'll take my rest day to train tomorrow. But like, again, that's just good human auto regulation, right? But the thing at the end of the day, if you want to actually see how your body is responding to things, one, do repeatable, consistent things. Pay attention. Like I think the thing that the reason this stuff is so trendy is women are so bad at actually listening to their bodies, like and knowing what's going on. Like I can tell you when I'm low on salt. I can tell you when I'm low on carbs. I can tell you when I'm low on water. I can tell you when I'm low on sleep. Like I'm so dialed in from years of training and being a pseudo athlete. Like I can usually tell, oh, this is what I need. Like this is kind of the thing, this is the dial that I need to move. And if you know how to do that and your body's fluctuating in the way it does, like you can probably tell what you potentially need. Like I can usually be like, oh, I need to go to bed a little bit earlier tonight. Like I got enough sleep last night, but I need a little bit better. You know what I mean? A little bit more. Like figuring out that is really important because then you have the skill to do that across a month. So if you are feeling poorly thermoregulated in the luteal phase during your runs, and you can tell that you're like, I feel like I need more sodium. I feel more like you can kind of dial into that, right? And then you kind of have the skills to adjust. And that's where good coaches, right? And or like Gen Pop people don't know that. Like when I tell Gen Pop people that I can feel when I need electrolytes, they're like, what? And I'm like, but I can't explain that feeling to you, but I know what it feels like because like I can tell distinctively when I wake up in the morning in the summer when it's hot and humid after a long run, how I feel compared to when I wake up in the middle of December when I'm in an off season. You know what I mean? Like that feeling I can just tell, you know what I mean? Like kind of thing. So anyway, yes, auto-regulation, but also like do predictable things and adjust enough variables. And like, you don't need to be obsessive with data, but track your cycle for 3 to 6 months because the data even shows that cycle to cycle performance is different person to person. So one cycle you might have impacts, one cycle you might not have impacts because hormone concentrations vary and your sensitivity is different than someone else's and your cycle can change over time. So like having the skills of knowing when to adjust in response to how you feel is important because it's not just applying to menstrual cycle. When you go through menopause and perimenopause is a roller coaster of wacky unbalanced hormones because it's supposed to be, that's what it is supposed to be. Then you have that skill set of adjusting for that in response to that as well. And that's going to take you across the lifespan. So when your kid keeps you up and you get 4 hours of sleep, you know how to adjust your training just as much as your menstrual cycle phase, just as much as you're being 46. You know what I mean? Like those skills are applicable, but a lot of fitness teaches women to ignore their bodies because you're pushing, never resting, never eating, super high stress. Like that's the very cliche trope, right? And that's the issue with women's fitness. And that comes from the fitness industry, not what is grounded in good training and science. So like that's my soapbox. I just wanted to like add to what you said there because that's like my soapbox is like the fitness industry is what told you guys to do those things, not actual training principles. Anyway, I'll get off my box.
Boom. Okay, closers. Now, here's the thing. I usually pick 1 or 2 of these, but I have a couple because I think that your answers will be good. So no pressure.
That's fine. You guys take as long as you need.
First one, we'll start easy. Stuck on an island, you get, how do we constrain this? 1 piece of fitness equipment. You get 1 piece. What is it going to be? One of our guests said incline bench. So you can do no worse.
I kind of want to just say like a really heavy set of kettlebells. Can I have 2
kettlebells? Yeah, kettlebells is a common answer.
Can I have 2 because I'm thinking when I had in COVID lockdown, my CrossFit box gave people out equipment. But we went up to North Georgia to just trail run and hunker down for 2 weeks. So when I came back, there was like no equipment left. So all I had was a 80-pound kettlebell, a plyo box, an ab mat, and resistance bands.
I'm surprised you took the ab mat.
Do you know how I got up to 15 handstand push-ups.
Oh, okay. I didn't think about it for handstand
I got up
push-ups.
to 15 handstand because I did them on my porch. If you followed me back in 2020, it was just me and
I was
kettlebell. And I did have a set of dumbbells too. But like, that's the most random equipment. So it makes me think about how that 80-pound kettlebell really got me through a lot, but maybe not one 80-pound one, but like maybe 250s or something like
250s.
that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's a good one. Okay, next one. And this is because we've had this conversation ourselves quite a bit the last couple of weeks as the Army has changed its PT test. But if you wanted to run somebody through a like ideal, not lab-based, more field-based hybrid test to get a good sense of where they're at, give me like 3 to 5 events. Go.
Deadlift. I know that's a military one, but
No, we had deadlift in ours.
I think deadlift is just a universal.
You give me yours and then I'll give you ours and I want to see what you think.
Okay,
So
so I got to
deadlift.
think across the spectrum. Deadlift.
Yep.
I'm trying to think
No
of like
pressure.
where I want the endurance spectrum to be. So I'm thinking maybe deadlift 1 mile,
Hmm.
but then you need something longer and aerobic. And I'm trying to decide if I want to do 10K or half marathon. Because I do think like the optimal hybrid fitness is probably through training in that range of stuff. I do think it starts to tinker a little uneven when you go towards the marathon ultra place. So I won't put ultra on that list. So like let's do 10K. I think that's a good test of endurance, but like hard taste your acid type endurance. So do 1 mile, 10K. Because like I think that those are good on
So
the
you're doing a deadlift, a mile,
mile
and a
and a
10K.
10. Yeah, yeah. Because you want to see those two different sides of that. Um,
Okay. Our event was our test was 3
Patience,
events.
patience, Drew. Let
No,
her
I know.
cook.
She's
She's
cooking.
thinking.
Can y'all hear the rain, by the way?
No.
I want to say power clean.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay.
It's kind of similar to deadlift, but it's different.
Yeah, sure.
Power clean or clean. So I would say snatch, but I think that's a little too technical to measure
Mm.
sheer power. And then broad jump.
Nice.
Oh, Alex loves that answer. We had in ours, what we're toying around with is deadlift, pull-ups, and then a 5 mile run. So 10K.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. So you only have 3. I thought, did
I
you say
would
5? Did I make
He
that
said
up?
3 to 5. 3 to
Oh,
I
5.
said
okay.
3 to 5. I said ours has 3, and then Alex told me to let you cook.
Pull-ups is a good one. Pull-ups is a good one.
Well, our thing is this, right? So you mentioned the snatch and then you sort of took it away, but I would actually think that you would want a test that promotes in our world sort of a cultural shift towards training intelligently, pursuing a skill, yada, yada, yada. So we left pull-ups in because the Army so gracefully took out leg tucks from the original ACFT because they thought they were too hard. We want them back. So
I've paid attention to this a little bit with it, a little
mhm.
bit. My approach is you should do the hard things and you should be able to do hard things. But I also think
We're out here silly goosing, just taking them.
I also think that burpees aren't stupid and people just shit on them because they can't do them. But
It's fair. I could get
Drew
behind
was
that.
recently criticized for programming burpees too often in some of our stuff.
Burpees and lunges.
you're just programming for Hyrox.
Sure, maybe that actually might be where that came from, but I just think that they're both beautiful things. I
I
mean,
think being able to get up and down off the ground very fast
for
is
sure.
not a total garbage thing. As
Yeah.
much as
So all the
everyone
haters
hates
out
them.
there, shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait till you see my burpee broad jumps in my next Hyrox, everybody.
Let's
Take
go.
this smoke.
Shifting gears slightly, I've got 2 more. This is the second to last. So I'm curious from like a social media and maybe more broadly just a business standpoint. Obviously, you had something in mind when you started this. What did that look like versus where you've ended up? And I'll add this to it actually. What would you tell your earlier self from where you're at now?
I would tell my earlier self, dream bigger.
Oh,
Honestly, I did not start my business. Okay. It sounds so arrogant. I accidentally built a really successful business. Now, did I take a lot of intentional choice along the way to get to that? I don't know if it was choice or I was going to do it anyway because I'm obsessed with problem solving. But I'm a scientist, right, by nature. So that's actually my stories today, but like that's topical to this. Is like I think I just kept trying to improve things and I'm always going to do that. That's very entrepreneurial of me, but I started my business to buy a computer and pay my bills because I wasn't getting paid as a grad student. Like my goals and aspirations up until I left my postdoc 2 years ago because my dumbass husband joined the military and relocated me, was to be a professor. Like that was my career goal the whole way through. I never started my business to run a business, to be a social media influencer, do all this stuff. Like that all just kind of happened. It was my backup plan, right? I did it because I didn't know about career security or getting jobs when the pandemic froze my postdoc or my my dissertation, and then when Regis joined the military, that put a lot of stuff up in the air for my career. So I always kind of had it as like my backup thing. Now it grew every single year during the course of all of that. It's not like I just decided in the last 2 years to grow it, but it's definitely grown a lot more rapidly since then. But I would say dream bigger. I don't think I realized the capacity of what I was capable of creating at the time when I did that, but I don't think anyone does, right? Like you just start and you just head in a direction. That's always been my approach to everything in life, is know what direction you're going, but you don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but just kind of like work hard and keep, throw shit at the wall and figure out what sticks and keep going with it. So dream bigger. Like I think I underplayed what I was capable of in that. And then, no, this is not what I thought it was going to be, because I thought I was going to be a professor. I think I answered your questions, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. No, that was
Yeah.
beautiful. And interestingly, the last question actually is a two-parter as well. I should have prefaced that, but the first part is one thing you've changed your mind on. And sometimes we tell people within the last 5 years, but you can do whatever. One thing you've changed your mind on, and then one thing you've doubled down on.
I've changed. There's a lot of things, right? I feel like, as I evolved and matured and got my PhD, I learned a lot of stuff and I changed my mind on a lot of things. But topical things. So one, I went into my dissertation actually thinking I'd find some menstrual cycle differences, and I didn't. And I learned a lot along the way on that. That was what influenced my dissertation, and I didn't. I have doubled down on in the last few years both the importance of a shit ton of zone 2 training for developing aerobic fitness, but also the importance of breaking the 80-20 rule and intentionally doing hard stuff as well. I would say those are two things that I've definitely kind of shifted some of my views on recently, which those are contrary to each other. And I don't know. I guess I kind of alluded to the other one earlier too, with like, I think you just need less but higher quality lifting, and it takes you 90% of the way. You don't need to chase volume there. You can get away with a lot less lifting than you think you can. That's something like the 2 hard sets approach to training is something the last few years I've really adapted into my training. But there's a lot of things there with that along the way in the years. Oh, bicep curls are essential.
Yeah, I think that's the universal truth.
Like you go through the phase of when you're training.
Yeah, that's the meme of like
the meme.
Chart, yep.
I made a reel basically of that meme. It was like the hybrid training transition or whatever. And people were so mad because they didn't understand my joke. People were like pissed. I was like, God forbid a woman makes a joke. Like, God forbid a woman makes a joke. They were like outraged that I made the joke. They're like, I don't get it. Should I be doing bicep curls or not?
Yes.
I was like, I'm doing bicep curls in the video. Like, I was like the most important part of training for an ultra marathon. Like clearly it's sarcastic. Like it's like I'm obviously in bicep curls or not doing anything, but like people took it really literally and they got really mad at me. So
it is the key. It's the secret.
I haven't joked about my bicep curls. I don't know. There's probably a lot of things I could think about, but those are things that stand out off the top of my head in the current moment.
No, that was good. You passed.
Yeah. So
well done.
Thank you.
We have been talking about making this episode happen probably for like a year or something. I don't even know when I first like
kind of a pain in the ass to get a hold of it. I know it. It's like
I
best
respect
and worst trait.
the boundaries.
I just am always overextended. I'm
We
always
have 2
overextended.
websites.
I have 2 websites. I do.
I mean,
yeah.
And by the way, folks, that'll all be in the show notes.
Yes.
Both websites and the Instagram.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I've been trying to finally like close the loop on a lot of people who have promised podcast episodes on. But I will say this is fun. I stopped saying yes for a while because if you're listening and you host a podcast, be fun when you interview. God, I can't stand
Some people
the
suck.
ones. It's like I sit down and they're just like, go. And they just want me to give a spiel on something that they want for their own audience that they don't know enough about. But like they don't engage with you back. There's no conversation. The questions are so like it's just literally I feel like they're just like and play. And then
We're
I
just hanging out.
talk for 45 minutes and then I brain rot. I feel like I'm rotting from the inside out when I'm done with it. So I stopped saying yes to podcasts for a while because I was like, this isn't fun. Like it's just not. So anyway, I appreciate you guys actually being bantery. I know
I'm not wearing shoes.
Me either.
So, see? Alex, you have shoes on?
I got shoes on. Hold on. I don't know what my mobility looks like.
Whoa, the leg lift.
Yeah,
you
there it
almost,
is.
you almost fell
Also,
over.
you guys
Oh,
can
shit.
use videos from this if you want. I put my hat on. Don't worry. I don't know who I DM'd today. I was like, do I have to get ready for this? And I was like, I'll just
If you're DMing somebody, it's always me.
Okay.
It's not me. Yeah,
Mess
I have the
with that.
30-minute
Well, you have a
time
30
limit. It's not good for.
Do you use Opal?
I did. but I stopped because it was the one I use now. Shoot, I don't even remember what it's called, but this started as sort of a bit on the podcast because my phone has like 4 apps on it now. So I made my iPhone a dumb phone, and then I was just doom scrolling. So I downloaded something on Chrome that like kind of insults you when you bypass the, it's like, shouldn't you be doing something more productive? It's like, ah, fuck, you're right.
For me,
Or
I use Opal, but
Opal was a good one.
and it's helpful, but for me, it's the line between like social media is my job,
Yeah,
but
see, that's
social
tough.
media is
That's
also a
tough.
brain rot. And so it's really hard to like, and it's also hard because sometimes I want to use social media to brain rot, but then I see the 6,000 DMs and I'm like, oh, and I have to
Hmm.
reply. So then I'm working when I shouldn't be working
Yeah,
versus like, then I'm going on there to actually do
do
things.
stuff.
And then my app's blocked and I'm like, shit, I'm trying to post right now. Or like I'm actually doing things. So yeah, it is very hard. I need like 2 phones, but I can't bring that feels so excessive.
This is stay focused, by the way. No free ads, but since,
Okay.
Opal, stay focused with no
Speaking of
E.
no free ads, I personally use Brick. I have 2 bricks, one at work, one
Oh,
at
I
home, and I
saw those. Are those
yeah,
cool?
physically like I bump my phone against it and it deactivates like any app that I have an issue with, and I can't use it again until I physically bump it against the brick again, and that reminder's enough.
I saw
I
those.
I will suggest, and like you're probably much more of an expert at this than me. Your platform's much bigger than mine. Your business is much bigger than mine. But I think there's something like you mentioned that you can get 90% of the results from like 10% of the strength training. I think that's also true of social media. I think like creating content, posting and ghosting, and like minimizing your interaction with the DMs because a lot of the stuff in there is like terrible and toxic.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, Alex. No, not for me.
Yeah.
My business signups and conversions is heavily associated with my presence on social media.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I also don't have as much combative stuff on social media anymore. I'm not as like, and anyone, they're like, this girl's such a nag. It was really bad for a while there. For the most part, people are nice. They just want to, they're chatting. But the thing is though, like I intentionally am in a space though where I need to drive engagement because engagement drives my views, which drives my relevance, which drives people to find me, which drives clients, which drives conversions. So like,
Which drives engagement, which drives views, which drives client. Yep.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
my problem is that there's not like a clear connection between the social media and the business. Like
yeah.
I just am fighting with people on the internet and nobody's spending any money on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, and it's not that I'm being fake. I'm not fake. If people listen to this, and I don't feel like any of my ideal clients are gonna ever find this episode, but like, I'm not being fake, but I am being intentional, right? Like, I'm sharing specific subsets of things that I know resonates with the people who are invested in my brand and my ethos and the Polly Pocket silly goosing power hour princess stuff or whatever. With the hybrid training. So, I mean, yes and no. So I do better about it now. I'm not, it just depends. Sometimes that's why Opal is nice for me because it's just like 7:30, done. You are off. And it kind of like immediately it's like, okay, stop. So my alarm to stop working and Opal start at the same time,
That was
kind of thing.
41 minutes ago. Sorry.
That's okay. I break my own boundaries though. Regis every night because he goes to bed at like 6 p.m. since he wakes up at 4 a.m. or whatever. And
Yeah,
he's
that's
like, every
fair.
night, he's like, he goes, it's your fault. You work out, you work late. He goes, I'm going to bed. I don't care what you do. And I'm like, oh, I don't work that late. And then last night he goes, what time did you come to bed? And I was like, shut up. So it just depends. So, I mean, it's not even social media. It's just being a business owner, honestly, in general is more the issue than it is social. I'm pretty good about actually now, like not the thing that has helped with social media is it's better to be on stories less for engagement and views. So that's helped
But that's
some
where
of
all the
that.
best fights happen.
I like posting on stories. I like shit posting. Stories are great because you can just like shit post the dumbest stuff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but I agree with you that you can post and ghost and be strategic about it. But I do like have to intentionally go back in and like try to reply to people, and I have to
Mm.
kind of be in the DMs because I get a lot of like potential client inquiries in DMs, and if I just ignore all of them, then I'll miss those. And like I have my inbox sorted in a very strategic way. I'm really type A with all of this. I promise. You should see my. If you just saw the back end of my business, you'd have an aneurysm, but in a good way. So,
Good
but it is
aneurysm.
a good aneurysm.
Yeah, those things.
I'm
Well,
just
see,
kidding.
people came for a conversation about what are we titling this? Cycle syncing hybrid training, and they're walking away with a quick primer on how to run a social media business.
You gotta, I mean, that's, but all my friends who are like the CEO, entrepreneur, business owners at this point in time, like we view our like CEO hat, if you want to call us, I feel cringy saying CEO, but it's kind of like what I am, like the head of my business. As you are the top of the funnel, you are your social media. Like my job is social media. Like that is my job, social media. Now I have someone running my programs page for me and helping with that. And like, I have someone who helps post on my YouTube and edit all that stuff. Like I have people doing, I'm not doing everything myself, but the face.
We have that too. I'm the funnel and then Drew's all the work.
Yeah. Like you have the fun. Alex is fighting with people, then drives up engagement. That's a strategy. I'm a Polly Pocket. You're angry. It works. Have you read the book? Have you read the book How to Never Split the Difference?
No.
I know that book. I've never read it.
Read it. That helped me with replying to people on the internet, actually. It's all about negotiation and like the FBI, but that book actually helped me with how I reply to people online.
Boom. Reading list.
Yeah. So.
All right, gang. Let's get out of here. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, this was okay. I'm not gonna lie, I was dreading this because it was so late at night. So this was actually pretty enjoyable.
Thanks. We were dreading it. Truthfully, we were dreading it too.
I wasn't dreading it because I didn't want to talk to you guys. I was really sleepy today.
No, we were like, really, what's her name again? What does she do? Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
It wasn't, it's not you guys. It's not you.
It's not you, it's us. Yep.
It wasn't you. But this was actually pretty enjoyable. Thanks for the shit talking.
For sure. Thanks for hanging out. Team, we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Team, welcome to the back half-ish quarter of the episode.
It's not even close to a quarter.
Welcome to the tail end of the episode with Doc Lyss. I'm going to say, I mean, like you just mentioned it, but you can see why she's been so successful in this space because she's, one, full of ideas, but then two, a fantastic scientific communicator, which I think is a phrase I've heard before, but
yeah, science communicator is something I strive for, despite not being a scientist.
Yeah. But no, I think, man, where do you start? There's a ton of useful nuggets in there. I really enjoy hearing from not only like hybrid athletes, quote unquote, because we've had plenty of those on, but folks that coach in this space and have built businesses in this space, because like you probably heard from her, they can speak to the in the trenches experience that they have felt as an athlete, but then also what they've seen from a population standpoint when it comes to just trends, preferences, mistakes people have made, successes folks have had in hybrid training. I know this was one of those conversations where we had a couple of different directions we thought about going when we started, but I think now having finished the conversation, I'm super pleased with everywhere that we went.
So hopefully we remember to hit this when we record the intro. So you'll have heard this already by the time you're hearing this. I know there's a time warp effect in these episodes, but some people may have clicked on this episode looking for Zone 2 cycle syncing hybrid training. I think hopefully we kind of addressed that in the episode. I was wondering if we were going to go through the whole episode without talking about zones, cycle syncing.
That would have been awesome.
Obviously we talked about hybrid training right off the bat. But yeah, hopefully we kind of provided enough context for people to understand why there's such a clickbaity title on it. And then we didn't necessarily spend a lot of time digging into those things.
I think people should understand that we're very close to just making up dumb titles for clickbaity purposes. So don't let the title of the episode fool you. Listen to all of them from start to finish.
I'm going to go off for a second because like in the real world timeline, like this, you'll be hearing this like 3 weeks after it happened. But like today in the life of where we're recording it, we are like a week and a half post publication of Michael Moss's episode. And I am a little bit mad at our podcast listeners because like we create like a clickbaity no guest episode where we just kind of bullshit about something and like tons and tons of you listen to it. And then we get a Pulitzer Prize winner who's done perhaps the most impactful coverage of the processed food industry in the last like 2 decades. And not as many of you guys listen to it. So like if like more of you listen to Zone 2 cycle syncing hybrid training than listen to a Pulitzer Prize winner, I'm going to be a little upset.
I think it's just the truth of the fitness industry, which is apropos for the conversation we just had, which is to say that if we followed the clicks, if we followed the engagement, we would end up just like every other podcast out there talking about the same things that everybody else is talking about. And sometimes we do that. I mean, we do the 101 episodes. We talk about squats and deadlifts and things like that. But damn it, people, to Alex's point, like there have been some good conversations that we've had. I think you and me, probably our favorite episodes, and we've talked about this, you know, just like name your favorite episode. And it's typically one that isn't the most engaging, but it's like the most, probably the most enlightening conversations that we've had.
Yeah. Now we're talking about the Mops and Mo's of Mops and Mo's.
Exactly.
Because the measure of performance for Mops and Mo's is like clicks, downloads, engagement, that kind of stuff. Got it. Like, are people having the conversation? Are we impacting it? Are we getting out there? Sure. But that is not the measure of effectiveness. No. The measure of effectiveness is, do we actually change things in a positive way? And you only need to reach 1 or 2 people to change things in a positive way. You just have to reach the right people with the right message. And so, yeah, like Drew alluded to, like the boundary avoidance theory stuff from fighter pilots. Like there's
So
some,
sick.
like you guys didn't like those
Because
episodes.
you guys are idiots.
We liked those episodes. Yeah.
But no, back to Alyssa, just again, like, and we'll put all this in the show notes. She mentioned a couple of, I was going to say she mentioned a couple of her websites, but just a ton of content. And that's not necessarily to like go to her stuff, buy her stuff, look at her stuff. I mean, she's brilliant in this space.
Ebooks,
webinar training.
webinars, stuff that's on YouTube, stuff that's on Instagram.
Just support military spouses, guys. I mean, that's what I'll say. But any closing thoughts?
I think that's it. This was a good one.
Awesome. See you guys next week.
Hey, Alex, let's cover our ass real quick.
Oh, great idea, Drew. All right, guys. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Before you go, please rate and review the pod on the listening platform of your choice. You can also visit us on our website at www.mopsinmos.com. That's mops, the letter N, mos.com. You can check out the library of podcast episodes, our latest blog entries, any helpful resources, and also sign up for our newsletter.
Drew nailed it. Just to underline a couple of things, the podcast entries have in-depth show notes on the website. So if you missed anything or you want to read any of the research we talk about, it is all there. You can, at the bottom of the website, sign up with your email and receive future updates from us. The blog posts go a little bit more in depth in kind of written form on a couple of topics we get questions about all the time. But most importantly, I just want to ask all you guys, our best way the word gets out is absolutely word of mouth. So tell your friends, tell the people you work with, anybody you think would find it useful. Thanks for spreading the word.
If you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot us an email at either Drew or Alex at mopsinmos.com.
Or there's a contact form on the website.
Thank you.